Howdy y'all, I wanted to create a quick video to let first-time home buyers know what the process looks like in general. Plenty of stuff out there on YouTube, but this has my face on it and it's also in a Southern accent. The first step that I tell folks in the home buying process is not a pre-approval letter. It's actually getting a strong and solid idea of what you want. And this requires some thought. Do you need 3 bedrooms? Do you need 4 bedrooms? Do you need 2 baths? I want you to visualize the home that you want, because that's going to inform a lot of things during even the home loan process, knowing what is right for you. If you're okay with a manufactured home, plenty of good looking manufactured homes these days. Some people don't like them, is what it is. Fine with me. Is a condo on the table? These are things your loan professional needs to know if you're looking in the market for a condo, if you're in the market for a manufactured home, because all of those different property characteristics have impacts on the loan product that they select for you, and also the interest rate that you talk about when you're in the pre-approval process in just general. Okay. Now the first step after the ideation of what you want is your pre-approval letter. You can talk to a realtor before you get a pre-approval letter, but just understand that conversation isn't going to be real high quality. A realtor isn't going to spend or want to spend a ton of time on a client that they don't know if they're financeable or not. They don't know if they can transact. Now, if you're a cash buyer, well, you're not watching this video most likely, but that's a different story. If you're thinking that you want to do any financing whatsoever, get your pre-approval first so that you increase the quality and have the best spend of your time and the realtor's time when it comes to this stuff. Pre-approval letter isn't hard. I do need credit. I do need income documentation. I do need asset documentation. Lots of these things can be digitally verified. I don't need a ton of it. And also, I'm happy to have multiple conversations with you over a span of time as you're developing these things in process. It don't all have to come in one batch. I want to be clear about that. The second step is contacting the realtor, okay? So if you go through me and you don't have a realtor on hand, I've got a whole list of realtors that specialize in different parts of East Tennessee that I'll connect you with. Free to use them or don't, but these are realtors that I know are verified. They're real people. They're not just on the other end of a phone call center somewhere. But you and your realtor will go out, review a couple of different homes. They'll usually have a list of homes that you can look at on your own, and then they or you will pick some homes to actually go out and see. The realtor may drive you out there. You may meet them out there. It's a little hard to say in that regard, but ultimately you will find the home that you love. This process can take months. So understand that every so often you either need to check in on, or your loan officer will check in on, your interest rate. Interest rate market moves sometimes dramatically every day, and so do the underlying financials. If you're close to the limits of your purchasing power, like I'm going to give you a amount of purchasing power that you have on your pre-approval sheet, okay? And if you are searching for homes near the limit of that purchasing power, you need to be checking in with your loan officer much more regularly than someone who is not, because your purchasing power changes day by day based on your interest rate, based on the movements of the market. It's pretty fluid. It can change a lot, okay? Now, the third step is you actually put in an offer. When you found a home that you like, financials work, you've gone with your loan officer to get your final financials, you're going to put in an offer, okay? And then that offer will either be accepted or declined. Sometimes you'll go back and forth with the other agent a little bit. Your realtor will be putting in the offer on your behalf, and they'll ask you about some things you're comfortable with. There will also be look at realtor videos for that step of the process. There's a lot to it, but ultimately it comes in at, this is the price that I'm comfortable with purchasing this house at. Realtor, go get it for me. The fourth step is that if your offer is accepted, we're going to lock down your rate, and we're going to update your documentation on the loan side. So your rate will be locked for the time it takes to do the loan, somewhere typically between 2 weeks and a month. And over that period of time, you're going to update your documentation. Like, for example, your bank statements have probably gotten a month or two out of date. You may want to bring in more pay stubs. more pay stubs, especially if you've gotten a raise. I can get credit for you on that, even if your pre-approval didn't have a raise on there. So we're going to get updates to the documentation. We're also going to fine tune what you want in the loan. So even though I select an interest rate, okay, you have choices. Typically, my rate sheet has 25 different rates you can pick from, and the terms of your offer will dictate which of those rates is available to you. So some loan contracts, some home contracts will have a pool of money set aside that I can reduce your interest rate for a period of time, the first 1, 2, or 3 years of the loan. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a couple of things, but ultimately that step of the process, you've put in most of the documentation on the front end, not a lot of time and trouble to that. To this point, the amount of time that you've invested in getting the loan, quite frankly, is probably about 3 to 4 hours, depending on how good you are with the documentation and the amount of trouble that it takes to do your loan. Are we self-employed? Do we have some rental properties going on? Those scenarios are going to be a little trickier when it comes to the document. But for most folks, it takes about 3 to 4 hours of their invested time to get a home loan to this point. Okay? Now, we're going to take all of those documents, we're going to take your offer contract, and we're going to put it all over into processing. And if I've done my job right, this will go super smooth. There will almost always be 1, 2, or 3 questions from the underwriter who comes in after the processor has taken all your documentation to the lender, but usually there's not more than that. More complicated borrowers will have more questions. Now, again, it's all part of me doing my job to make sure that those questions are minimized. A question only comes up if there's a document that doesn't answer a question in the file, and I want to predict the questions. But things are almost always going to come up to some extent, okay? You're going to secure homeowners insurance at this stage. You're going to make sure that you have an accurate quote for homeowners insurance and flood insurance, and you're going to get that quote over to me, and then a little bit later we're going to bind that insurance to the property as we get a little closer to the finish line. Now, after we've gone through our processing and underwriting, we get a thing called clear to close. I call you up and say, hey, we're good. We're ready to close your loan. Usually you'll have a closing date that you agreed to in your sales contract, and 95% of the time, we will be wrapped up before that, even a couple of days before the date on that contract. Things can change, loans can go a little sideways, but in general, we get our clear to close several days before is actually on the contract. Now, sometimes we can move that closing date up if you want, but most of the times we just keep the agreed upon date, and you go down to a title company. Okay, you go to a land title office in some states, but you'll go out there and spend about an hour of your time signing paperwork. It's sometimes not the most convenient time of day. You'll usually want to take the whole day off work because at the title company, you're going to get your keys. Okay, some folks are not, when I bought my first house, I had no idea when I actually got the house, right? When someone put the keys in my hand at the title office, I was like, oh, this is happening, right? This is real. You can even move in the same day. I don't recommend scheduling your movers for the day of close. Things can and do happen. I've seen it all, right? But it is something you can do. You'll get your keys, you're ready to move in, you have ownership, because whether it's a brokered loan like I do or it's a direct lender, they're funding your loan right then and there. They're paid on the spot. If you got any questions, holler at me. Love talking to first-time home buyers. I think that's a pretty good overview. It's not comprehensive, but it should do for right now.